What's up, BookTube? Welcome back. My name is Laura if you're new here, and today I'm wrapping up my September reading month. I had a kick-ass month for reading in September. I don't know what the hell happened, but I read a lot. Like a lot. This might be one of my best reading months, like literally ever. So buckle up, this is probably going to be a pretty long video. I read 10 books in September. That is wild for me. So that's great for me. Very happy for myself. But in September, I was doing 3 readathons. The first one was Not Safe for Bookathon, hosted by Paige over at Pages with Paige. I also did round 2 of Becca's Bookopoly-a-thon, as well as G's Magical Readathon over at Book Roast. So a very busy month for readathons. I do really well with reading when I do readathons, I find, so I should really do them more often. But I'm just going to get right into it with the books. Let's get started. So for my reading stats, again, I read 10 books this month, which totaled to 2,923 freaking pages. Like, I'm so proud of myself. So we'll start with the books that I did not finish. The first one being The First Sister by, oh god, Linden A. Lewis, maybe? I think I'm wrong, but the name is on the screen here so you can see. This was my Not Safe for Bookathon prompt for Edge Play and my Bookopoly-a-thon prompt for a feed scroll. So I like opened Bookstagram and picked the first book that I saw on there to read. I started it and I just really was not feeling it. It's a sci-fi that like combines The Handmaid's Tale with something else that I currently forget. Yeah, I just really wasn't a fan of the writing style. I didn't like the characters. Like, I just wasn't vibing with it whatsoever, so I decided to DNF it. I also temporarily DNF'd The Storm of Life by A.R. Capetta. I'm not planning on permanently DNFing it. I just wasn't in the mood for it. I got to page 54 and I was just kind of bored. I just think I wasn't in the mood for it like whatsoever. This one was my prompt for Rope Play for Not Safe for Bookathon, and I think it was a chance card for a Bookopoly-a-thon. I loved the first book so much, and like I think I need to maybe reread the first book before reading this one, because like I don't really remember what happened in the first book, and like I want to go into this book knowing that I'm going to love it, and I think if I had forced myself to read it right now I would not. So I'm gonna put this down for now, maybe either find a recap of the first book or just reread the first book and then eventually get to this book. And then the last book, I also didn't DNF this one. I just started it and I got really busy in the last week of the month and I did not have time to finish it, but that was The Near Witch by V.E. Schwab. I am still fully planning on reading this book. I just, again, didn't have time for it. I went on vacation to Quebec with my family over the weekend, and so I was busy like trying to prepare for that, and like work was really busy and I just did not have time to read at all. Like literally the last book that I finished was September 23rd, I think. I haven't finished a book in 2 weeks, so this is no fault of this book. I am just very busy right now and didn't have time to read it. I literally got to page 12 and then I was like, I don't have time for this. So once I finish my core TBR for October, I'm probably gonna pick this one up afterwards. Okay, and now moving on to books that I did finish. The first one that I read this month was Cat's Cafe by Matt Tarpley. This was an adorable little collection of comics, and like going into it I thought it was going to be just a really fun, funny, cutesy comic, and it definitely was that. But it also dealt a lot with topics of like mental health and feeling lonely and sad and like not having a friend group, and like it was actually like really touching as well, and I really enjoyed this one. The art style is phenomenal, but basically it is about a cafe run by a cat, and each comic is only like 1 or 2 panels for the most part. There's a couple where there are 3 or 4 panels, but they're very short comics, and it just kind of takes you through like this cat running his cafe and all of his little animal friends that come into his cafe and all of their problems, and you see their friendships blooming and they have their own life struggles, and it was such a sweet comic, and there were so many interesting characters in here. There was like a punk rock axolotl, there was a penguin obsessed with coffee, like it was just it was so wholesome. I loved it so much. It was just so cute and put the biggest smile on my face. It was very quick as well, like obviously being a comic and like especially having very short comics. I think I read this in like half an hour. I definitely recommend this one if you're just in the mood for something to make you smile. Like it was just so much fun, and I gave it a full 5 stars. Like it was that good. And then for Not Safe for Bookathon, this one filled the prompt for Pet Play, and for Bookopoly-a-thon, this was the prompt for Who, which is to read a book that you don't hear people talking about, but more people should be talking about this book. It was so good. After that, I read Love Me For Who I Am by Kata Konayama. This is the first book in a manga series about a non-binary kid in high school who just wants to feel accepted and understood, but nobody around them understands who they are, until somebody from their school kind of makes an assumption about their gender and invites them to come work at their like unconventional maid cafe, which is for girly boys. So he assumed that the main character is a boy who likes to dress as a girl, doesn't realize that they're non-binary and like what that means. So the first book was them kind of facing those assumptions, and the main character, whose name I can't remember right now like at all, addressing what their gender actually is with the people from the maid cafe, and kind of addressing concerns and like challenging their mindsets and like what they think gender is and the gender expectations that they're putting on the main character. So the first book was mainly like character driven, a lot of angst and kind of like not arguing but just challenging those gender assumptions. It was fun. I enjoyed it. I am planning on carrying on with the series at some point. It just wasn't like my favorite thing. I found the characters to be a little childish, I guess. I'm not really sure what the word is, but I found the arguments to be, I don't know, just like very like one-dimensional. It almost felt like the author just took like the bare basics of like non-binary struggles and put that into a book, which like is fine. But I think just for me reading it as somebody who is non-binary, it's like I don't really need or care to read about somebody trying to explain what non-binary is to cis people, because I do that every fucking day of my life. And so I found it to be kind of redundant for myself personally, but it was still a very enjoyable read. I liked some of the side characters a lot. They were all very fun. I liked the like maid cafe setting, and there's also a like romance blooming as well, so I think that'll be fun to explore down the road. But overall, it was like a decent read, not my favorite, but like still good enough to carry on with, and I gave it 3 stars. And then for Not Safe for Workathon, this one filled my prompt for spanking, which is to read a book that will leave a mark. And then for Bookathon, this was the current events prompt. Next up, I read Midnight Sun by Stephanie Meyer. Finally, I'm so behind on everybody else, but I was visiting with my brother and my sister-in-law, and we were talking about books, and she learned that I had not read this book yet, and she was just like, take my copy. Like, you're borrowing it, you're reading it right now, go home and read this. And I flew through this. I think I read like 150 pages like that night. I sat down, I was like, I'll just read like a couple of pages, and then all of a sudden I was like 150 pages in. I could not put it down. It was so much fun. I'm not going to talk about what this book is about, because honestly, if you don't know what this is, then I don't know where you've been. But I fucking loved this. This was amazing. It was bad. It was still terrible. Not good writing, is not good plot. Like, it is a bad book, but it's just so much fun. It's so entertaining and like just this addictive read that I really enjoyed. A good book doesn't have to be good, you know? Like, you can absolutely adore a book and have it be trash, but that's why you love it, you know? And that's like one of these books. This is just absolute fucking trash, and it's so terrible, but I just eat this up. This brought me back to like preteen me. It just brought back all those like happy nostalgic feelings from back in the day when I was like a huge Twilight fan, and it just made me feel happy again, you know? I haven't felt happy in a while because of COVID, and like this is exactly what I needed, was just to be brought back to a time where like things were like pretty good, you know? Like, I was an angsty teenager, but like my like Twilight years, those were like some good years, you know? And this just brought me back to that, and I really enjoyed it. Now, Midnight Sun compared to Twilight, I liked this better than Twilight. I'm not sure if that's controversial. I have not read like any reviews of Midnight Sun, so I have no clue what people are saying about it. So like maybe everybody likes Midnight Sun better than Twilight. I have no idea, but I personally really did. I thought this was way more interesting. Edward as a perspective just has a lot more to offer. He talks to more people, he does more things, he's a freaking vampire. Like, he's a way more interesting person than Bella is, because like following Bella's perspective in Twilight, all we got was like her talking to shitty people in high school and like obsessively thinking about Edward. Whereas from Edward's point of view, we also get to see like what the Cullens are doing, and we get to hear about the vampire lore and the treaties between the vampires and the werewolves and all of these other elements that Bella just can't provide because she's a human. Plus, I loved seeing what a hot mess Edward is. Like, this boy, he is an anxiety-ridden mess. Like, this man has no clue what he's doing. He has no idea how to talk to women. It's hilarious to see his like internal monologue and hear what he's thinking and just how anxious and nervous he is, because he doesn't portray that. At least from like how Bella sees him, he comes off as being like very like cool and suave, but then you hear his thoughts and you're just like, bro, are you okay? Like, take a seat, take a nap, like it's gonna be okay. So I thought that was hilarious to read, and I just really enjoyed enjoyed this one. Again, it's terrible. It's so bad, but it was just a really good time and I thoroughly enjoyed it. But with that said, I really could not give this more than 3 stars because even though I enjoyed it so much, it is still a very bad book. So 3 stars is still a good rating. In terms of like writing style and plot and like all the like technical aspects of writing a book, this is probably like a 1 or 2 stars, but I brought it up to a 3 just because of how much I enjoyed it and how much joy it brought me. So 3 stars for Midnight Sun. And this one was not actually part of my core TBR. I started it in August and didn't finish it until September, so it wasn't part of Bookopoly-thon, but for Not Save a Bookathon, this one filled the prompt for Butt Plug, which is to read a book over 500 pages. After that, I read Isn't It Bromantic by Lyssa K. Adams. This is the 4th book in the Bromance Book Club series, and y'all, this was so good. This very quickly turned into my favorite book in the series. The Russian is my favorite character, so I was so excited to read this book and it did not disappoint. I fucking loved it. It was so good. The Bromance Book Club series, if you don't know, is about a group of like elite men from Texas. They're all like sports stars and like celebrities, and they're all really good friends, and they made the Bromance Book Club where they read romance novels that were written by women for women to learn how to be better partners, better men, how to express their emotions better, how to tear down patriarchal bullshit and toxic masculinity within themselves and each other, just how to be better men and better friends and better husbands. It's just such a wholesome concept. I adore this series. It's just such a good time. And at first I was a little apprehensive about the 4th book because the Russian throughout most of the series is described as a very gross kind of character. Like he is constantly like farting and like he has a lot of like bowel problems. He's kind of smelly, like he's just described as like kind of a gross dude. So that was kind of him in the 1st book, but then like in like books 2 and 3 you kind of learn more of his personality, where he's actually like such a softie and he's very sensitive and he writes poetry and like he's just such a sweet guy. Oh my god, I am in love with the Russian. But I'm getting off track here. So the synopsis for the 4th book, it follows Vlad, also known as the Russian, and he is in the process of going through a divorce. He and his wife are childhood friends and he's been in love with her for their entire lives. And after he moved to America to go play pro hockey, he asked her to marry him. She moved to America and then she kind of went off and did her own thing. It's been, I think, 6 years since then, and she shows up out of the blue asking for a divorce. But then Vlad ends up having a really bad injury while playing hockey and he needs someone to take care of him, so his wife comes to help him and their spark starts to rekindle and things go from there, and it was just so fucking good. So it's a second chance romance and like I love that shit. I didn't think that I was into second chance romance, but like I really am. I think it just has to be done a certain way, but it was just so well done and just such a good time. And like the Russian, again, he is just such a sweetheart. He's so soft. They like recite poetry to each other in Russian around their friends and like it's just it's so cute. It just made me all warm and fuzzy inside and I loved it. Vlad is also writing his own romance novel, so the Bromance Book Club is helping him with his romance as well as with his book, and it's just, it was so good. This review has been a bit of a mess, but I can't stop gushing about this book and I just can't form like coherent thoughts about it because I loved it so much, so I apologize if this is just an absolute fucking mess, but just take my word for it and read this book. It was lovely. I adored it and I gave it 4 stars. Hands down my favorite book in the series. And then for Not Save a Bookathon, this was my prompt for Bite Mark, and for Bookopoly-thon it was the prompt for Community Shelf and to read a library book. My next read was The Ballad of Black Tom by Victor LaValle. Honestly, I don't really know how to explain what this book is about. This one is a retelling of The Horror at Red Hook by H.P. Lovecraft, which I have never read. I know literally nothing about it, so I was going into this completely blind. Like I literally did not know a thing about it. I just knew that it was a horror novella that had some kind of like portal fantasy time travel aspect to it. So I was very intrigued by that, and I was so confused this entire book. I had no clue what was going on. I read this like probably about a month ago now, and I could not tell you a single thing that happened, like at all. I do wish that I hadn't listened to the audiobook for this one. I think I would have followed along better if I was like physically seeing the words. Also, the narrator, I love this narrator, is Kevin R. Free. He did the narration for Murderbot, and as we all know on this channel, I'm obsessed with Murderbot. I love it so much. But because I'm so used to hearing that voice as this like really funny, sarcastic character in Murderbot, Murderbot, hearing his voice in this like really dark horror fantasy, it was very jarring for me, and I kept like waiting for the punchline. I was like waiting for some kind of sarcastic joke, and it wasn't happening, obviously, given that it's a different book, but it just threw me off so much, and I kept forgetting that I wasn't reading the Murderbot diaries, and it just took me out of the story quite a bit. So that's partially my fault. I should have like realized this going into it and gone with the ebook once I realized that I wasn't enjoying the audiobook, but I didn't do that, so here we are. Like, I didn't dislike it. It was definitely interesting. It was creepy as hell. There are a few scenes that I can remember that like actually gave me chills. The writing was really good. The atmosphere was fantastic. The characters were interesting. It's really just the plot that is just whoosh, like over my head completely. I have no clue what happened, but I gave this one 3 stars. And for my readathons, this one filled the prompt of blindfold for Not Safe for Bookathon, which is to go into a book blind. For Bookathon, it was to read a spooky book, and then for Magical Readathon, this one was for the Mist of Solitude, which is to read a standalone. All right, and now it is time for what is probably my favorite book of the month, and probably a new favorite like in general, but that is Taming Demons for Beginners by Annette Marie. This was so good. This one is an urban fantasy set in Vancouver. It's a Canadian book. Love that for me. And it follows a girl whose parents have just passed away, and she has gone to live with her uncle while he kind of deals with the estate. And he has actually stolen her inheritance and all of her things, and so she is trying to get it back. I think it was a few months after she gets there, she learns that her uncle is actually running an illegal demon selling ring. She already knew that demons existed. Her parents used to be demon hunters. They made her promise that she would never do magic, but she's always found it really interesting, so she's done a lot of research on it and is just fascinated by it. So when she learns that her uncle is holding a demon in the basement trying to like take control of it and sell it, she gets very curious and kind of goes down to talk to it when nobody is there, and they become friends. This is like one of my favorite tropes. I love any kind of like unlikely friendship pairing, especially when it's a human and a demon. Like, it's just so cute. She bakes a lot in this book. She just ends up feeding him all the time and like baking things for him, and they slowly become friends. It's also like a very slow burn romance between the two of them, which I'm just so here for. Which is not a spoiler, by the way. It's like listed as a romance in the Goodreads genre tag thing, but this was so fucking good. Oh my god, it was amazing. I read it in like 24 hours. I could not put it down. It was awesome. I loved this book so much. I loved all of the characters so much. Actually, their dynamic makes me think of Lilo and Stitch. They just have that same kind of vibe, and it was hilarious to read and like be picturing Stitch walking around. So cute. I don't think I'm doing a very good job at like describing this book, but just trust me, it was fucking amazing. I gave it a full 5 stars. It could get nothing less than that. It was so good. It was so good. Just go read it, okay? For Not Safe for Bookathon, this one filled the prompt for service submission, which was to have somebody else pick a book for you. So my roommate picked this one for me. And then for Bookathon, this was a community shelf, and the prompt that I got for that was to have a friend pick a book that I think I will enjoy. Again, roommate picked this one and I did enjoy it, so good job there. After that, I read Queen Takes Nights by Jolie Sue Burkhart. This one is a vampire erotica novella, and it was interesting. It follows a girl who has been on the run for her whole life because she has monsters chasing her. So she has to run from them, and then they kind of catch her scent, and then once they find her, she has to run again. And there's one night where the monsters finally catch up to her. She is about to die, and then these 2 men appear out of nowhere, and they're calling her their queen, and they save her life, and they take her back to where she was staying, and she learns that she's actually a vampire queen. Her mother was the queen of this vampire clan, but she had to leave, and she just never told her about their vampire heritage. Like, she obviously knows that the supernatural exists because she has monsters following her everywhere, but she thought this whole time that she was human, and turns out she is not. And then, yeah, they have, really raunchy sex a lot. This is very much like blood play and everything. Like, it's that kind of like vampire trope where like them drinking blood is a very sexual experience, and that's what they do a lot. But then it was also a shifter romance too. That was unexpected. So the vampires who were not queens, they don't come into their full power until they are serving a queen. So the 2 men that find her, they hadn't come into their full power yet until they drank her blood, and then as they're doing so, the one guy turns into a giant fucking rock troll, and the other one turned into a panther. So that was weird. Cool, but weird. They did not have sex while he was a panther, by the way. They kept the rock troll and panther-ness of themselves put away while they were fucking, because that would have been too much. It was already a bit much before that. But in terms of like enjoyment. This was fun. It was definitely a very entertaining read. It was not good by any means. Like the writing was terrible. The dialogue was so awkward. It was very like over the top dramatic, and like it was not like well written, but it was very entertaining and just kind of a lot of fun and like weirdly addicting as well. Like, I'm probably going to carry on with the series. This is like a 20 book series. Like this is a huge series and I kind of want to read them all. I don't know why. It was just fun. But I gave it 3 stars. Again, same as Midnight Sun. If it was just based on like writing and like the technical parts of the book, it would have been like a 1 or a 2, but I really enjoyed it. It was really fun and entertaining, so I bumped it up to a 3. Yeah, it was weird, but good in a bad way. I don't know how to explain that, but you know what I mean. For Not Safe for Workathon, this one filled my prompt for Dom, which is read a book with a strong female lead. For Bookopoly-thon, this one was for the prompt Monsters. And for Magical Readathon, this one filled the prompt for Ruin of the Sky, which is to read a book with supernatural elements to it. So vampires. And then the next 2 books were both part of the same series. The first one was Learn My Lesson by Katee Robert, which is the second book in the Wicked Villain series. This was amazing. It was so good. The Wicked Villain series is a series of Disney retellings where the princess falls in love with the villain instead, but like make it erotica. So these are amazing. So it's not like actual like Disney, like there's no like magic and stuff. All these books take place in the same world. They live in this city called Carver City, and all the characters, they're all like crime lords and that kind of thing, but they all frequent the like BDSM sex club that Hades runs in the like neutral part of the territory of Carver City, and that's where shenanigans ensue. Book 2 follows Hades and Meg, who are already a couple, and they end up seducing Hercules. Hades does this because he wants to get back at Hercules' father for exiling him from Olympus, so he is planning on like making him his sex slave basically. But then they actually all fall in love and they become a really cute like poly throuple, and it was so good. I did not expect to like fall in love with this book so much. I loved the first book. I could get 4 stars, but like book 2 though was just a whole other level. It was still very kinky and like had a lot of raunchy sex in it. It was fantastic, but there was also like an unexpected emotional side to it as well, and like the first book also did, but not as much as book 2 did, and I loved that part of it. It was so good. And just like seeing Hades and the difference in his personality from when he was being Hades, the ruler of the underworld, and then seeing who he is with Meg and him like slowly falling in love with Hercules and becoming more vulnerable around him. The characters were just surprisingly well developed given how short this book is. I loved this book so much. It was genuinely a fantastic book. I went into the series just looking for a fun erotica story to read that's just like really quick and easy, and this series has turned out to be like a really good romance series with like interesting angst and like well-written characters and a lot of emotional value to it. Like it's just a genuinely good series, and I didn't think it was going to be this good, but I'm so surprised by it and I just adore it. So Learn My Lesson, I gave a full 5 stars. It was that good. And this one filled the prompt for Fireplay for Not Safe for Workathon. I got the prompt for Monsters a second time for Bookopoly-thon, and then the Tower of Rumination for Magical Readathon, which was to read a 5-star prediction. And then I also read book 3, which was Learn My Lesson. This one follows Tink and Hook, and again, fan-fucking-tastic. It wasn't as good as book 2 was for my personal taste, but I still loved it. Tink has been working in the sex club for the last 7 years. She made a deal with Hades to save her from Peter Pan, who is a very abusive ex. So Hades saved her from that, but now her time is up, and Hades is kind of forcing her to kind of go stand on her own feet. Like he doesn't want her to have to rely on him for the rest of her life, so he's forcing her to go and live her life away from his protection. And like literally within 4 steps of being out of the club, Peter Pan was there trying to kidnap her again, and so Hook kind of swoops in and says that he will protect her if she marries him. Hook has been in love with Tink for a very long time. Tink can't fucking stand the guy, but she has no other option, so she agrees, and then things kind of go from there, and it was really good. This is obviously a romance, so they do fall in love, and I loved seeing Tink deal with her trauma, break down her own barriers, and just allow herself to love and be loved again. And it was a really interesting, well done character development for Tink. I also love Tink because she's plus sized and she loves her body, but but she still has moments where she's self-conscious. And I loved how her being plus size was handled in terms of the like sex club part of it, because she wasn't fetishized. She was just seen as this beautiful curvy woman, but like it wasn't creepy, and I really appreciate that, because I feel like in a lot of romance novels where you have a curvy person, they're just seen as like only a sexual object, and it just bothers me. But this was done so well in that aspect of it, in all aspects, but especially that part. And yeah, it was just so well done, and I love this series so much. Like, it's very quickly becoming a like new favorite series of mine, and I can't wait to get to the rest of it. But yeah, so 4 stars for this one. Not as good as Learn My Lesson, but still amazing. And then this one was my prompt for Breath Play for Not Safe for Bookathon, and my prompt for a small book for Bookopoly-thon. And finally, at long last, the last book that I read in September was Payback's a Witch by Lana Harper. This one I got as an ARC from NetGalley, and I have posted a like full review for it on my channel, so I will link that for you guys. But because I have that video, I'm not going to talk about it too much. But just real quick, this one is a adult contemporary romance with a witchy twist to it. So it's a magical tournament, a revenge plot, and a sapphic romance. This book was so much fun. I really enjoyed it. The atmosphere is like hands down the best part of this book. It is such an atmospheric town. It's described as being like 24/7 all year long Halloween feeling. This is truly the perfect fall book. If you're like a seasonal mood reader, definitely read this book in the fall. It was such a cute book. It's definitely not a book that's going to like stick in my brain for a long time, you know, like it's not going to stay with me forever. I did really enjoy it, but it just like didn't like impact me a whole lot. It was more so just a like fun, quick read, but it was very enjoyable. So I will leave that there just because again, I have the full video up, so I'm not going to like repeat myself. If you want to hear more like in-depth thoughts, I will leave the video review for it down below for you guys to go check out. But I gave this one 3 stars, and for Not Safe for Bookathon, it filled my prompt to read a freeing book. This one was an ARC, so it freed me from the obligation of reading a book. For Bookopoly-thon, this was the prompt for Last Color. So the cover had to have a color that was also on the cover of the last book that I read. And then Magical Readathon, this was my prompt for Ash Torn Tree, which was to read a book that was at the top of my TBR. Hello, editing Laura popping in to make this already very long video even longer just for funsies. I forgot to talk about the like finished bingo board for Not Safe for Workathon. So here it is. We were allowed to double up on certain prompts. I just hadn't decided which prompts to double up on yet, which is why I didn't mention it in the thing, but I was going to and I forgot. Anyways, not important. Here is my like actual finished bingo card. I got so freaking close to filling the whole card. So close, but I couldn't quite do it, but that's okay. I still read a whole lot this month, and go me. So, but yeah, so here is all of my cards that I filled out, all of my prompts being doubled up and everything. So yeah, there we go. Goodbye. And that is it. I'm exhausted. Oh my god, I've been filming for an hour and a half. My voice feels fried after talking for so long. So next time that I read this much, somebody please remind me to do like a midway wrap up. That way I don't have to do all of it at once, because this was a lot. So thank you to those of you who stuck around for the whole video. I appreciate you. But let me know what you read in September, or if you've read any of these books, what did you think of them? I would love to hear your thoughts as well. But in the meantime, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you're having a fantastic day wherever you are in the world, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye!